Hello students, welcome to Prep Veda. In this video, we will discuss about the sources of Indian Constitution. That is, what are the various other constitutions of the world which had a profound impact on the shaping of Indian Constitution which we are seeing in the present day. If you could see this image, you can understand that the Indian Constitution had derived inspiration from various constitutions like the United States, British Constitution, Irish Constitution, Canadian Constitution, Australian Constitution, Weimar Constitution or erstwhile Germany, French Constitution, South African and Japanese Constitution. You must understand the fact that some of the best ingredients or the best characteristics of various world constitutions were included or various provisions in Indian Constitution drew inspiration from these characteristics so as to make the Indian Constitution a novel one. To begin with, the Constitution of India has drawn extensively from the Western legal traditions in its enunciation of the principles of a liberal democracy. It has adopted the following features from the Government of India Act of 1935. This is a colonial era law during the British regime in India. Various features like the federal scheme of the Indian Constitution. What is a federation? A federation, in simple terms, indicates the division of powers between the central government and the state government. So this scheme was drawn from the Government of India Act 1935. Along with that, the office of the governor and his powers and some elements of judiciary, public service commission, emergency provisions and administrative details. So these are some of the influences of the Government of India Act 1935 which we have included in the Indian Constitution. Next, let us look at what are the ingredients that we have drawn from the British Constitution. The parliamentary form of government, bicameralism. What is bicameralism? That is, you have two legislative or law-making bodies, namely the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha at the central level, and at the state level, you have the legislative assemblies and legislative councils. Then the idea of a single citizenship, namely the Indian citizenship. In the United States of America, you have dual citizenship, namely the citizenship of that particular state as well as the citizenship of the United States of America. Then the idea of rule of law, the institution of the Speaker of the Assembly or the Parliament and his role, and the legislative procedures and conventions, and thus the procedure established by law. So these are some of the ingredients from the British Constitution. Then what are the features that we adopted from the United States Constitution? The Charter of Fundamental Rights was similar to the United States Bill of Rights. The federal structure of the government, the power of judicial review, the independence of the judiciary, and the president as the supreme commander of the armed forces, and the element of due process of law. The philosophy of due process of law was also adopted from the United States Constitution. From the Irish Constitution, we have adopted the directive principles of state policy and the nomination of members to the Rajya Sabha and the method of election to the President of India. From the French Constitution, we have adopted the ideals or the philosophy of liberty, equality and fraternity. It is from the inspiration of French Revolution that these ideas, these novel ideas of modern progressive democracy, namely liberty, equality and fraternity, were adopted in the Indian Constitution, drawing its source from the French Constitution of 1791. Then from the Canadian Constitution, a quasi-federal form of government, that is a federal system along with a strong central government. In India, if you see, we have various states, but there is also the central government. Though there's a federation, we have a unitary government at the central level, and the central government has more powers. That's why the residual powers or the residuary powers have been given to the union government. So both these elements of quasi-federal form and a residual powers to the central government have been adopted from the Canadian Constitution. From the Australian Constitution, we have adopted the freedom of trade and commerce within the country and also between the states, the power of the national legislature to make laws for implementing treaties and even on matters outside the normal federal jurisdiction were included. Along with this, the element of concurrent list, wherein both the central government and the state government have the scope to make laws on these provisions, have been adopted from the Australian Constitution. So, as part of a modern democracy, it is imperative that for the citizens to enjoy their rights, they should also perform the duties. So, that is why from the Russian constitution we have adopted the principle of fundamental duties. Also, the ideals of social, economic, and political justice in the preamble were included or drawn inspiration from the Russian constitution. The various procedure for amendment of the constitution and the election to the members of the Rajya Sabha has been drawn from the South African constitution. From the Japanese constitution, we have adopted the procedure established by law. The emergency provisions in the Indian constitution have drawn its inspiration from the German constitution or the Weimar Republic's constitution. So now you understand what are the various sources of the constitution and how the Indian constitution has borrowed the best from the rest of the world and made this constitution a bulwark of democracy. For free material and resources, please download the Prep Veda app or log into www.prepveda.com. Thank you. Have a great learning.